Good morning, everybody. It's forum time. Ringing a bell, forum time.
Good morning.
Oh, there you go, Dave. Thank you. I am going to introduce two of our three guests today. The third one is on his way. But I also just would like to welcome you to the second, maybe you would say third or fourth forum that we've had at Plymouth on housing and housing equity and housing justice. We've had people come as guests. The possibilities of learning about housing and housing justice and equity and housing in the city and the community and the county of Onondaga goes on because we're really right now at a juncture. We have engaged the gear shift of this community, this county, to look at housing and what housing we have. And so I would like to introduce our guests today. I see the third one just walked in. Today, in all of this commotion around housing, we decided today to focus on the residents, on the tenants of the people who are going to be impacted, especially by the changes in relationship to I-81. And so I would like to introduce today three people, two women who have been involved in interviewing residents and tenants, especially of McKinney Manor. They have, it's my understanding, interviewed about 44 households out of 51, which is pretty amazing. And then we also have been having fairly recently meetings of tenants and residents at Hops Church, a sister church of ours. And we have had those meetings in conjunction with the Legal Services of Central New York. And so today we have an attorney with us today, Adam Croom, who will speak also about the residents. So I would just like to very quickly, as they come up and take their seats up here, I would just like to very quickly list some terms that we've been hearing recently. First of all, the word housing vouchers, affordable housing, mixed income housing, relocation, eviction, waiting list, tenants associations, housing authority, and a brand new, I'm going to give you the exact name, a brand new, I guess you would say, agency in the city of Syracuse, which just was approved and convened this last week with the name of the Syracuse Housing Strategies Corporation, approved by the Common Councilors with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 members. And so that's another attention to the housing issues in the city of Syracuse. I was fascinated by Eric's sermon today because he talked about gear shifts and shifting to a new focus. And this city has been ignoring for many years the housing crisis. It's been patchwork, it's been waiting lists, evictions, people waiting, and now we have the possibility, a great need, a shortage of housing, a crisis, and we have this great opportunity with growth in the county and the city, with Micron coming and the possibilities of thousands of jobs. So now there's another focus on housing, but you still don't hear very much the words housing equity or housing justice in all the conversations. So it's sort of left up to the people who are out here to raise those up in this Housing Justice Task Force, which began under the umbrella of ACTS and has continued here at Plymouth. and has broadened. I don't see Bonnie here yet, but she's coming. We have another Bonnie here from the Zen Center, Bonnie Schultz. Some of the people amongst you today are part of that Housing Justice Task Force, and I think it's just the beginning of our focus at Plymouth. We're going to continue as a task force in the community. We have this new corporation to keep our eyes on and be part of and to assess, hold accountable. And suggestions from any people here in our community of Plymouth Church, in our city, and in the ACTS organization, any residents who have ideas, it's a time to be grateful and gather those in and look at how we can pressure and accompany the changes that are happening. So if I could ask Katherine and Lucretia and Andrew to come up and take a seat. So today, again, we're focusing on residents, but other questions are certainly welcome. Tom has offered to tape you, just so you know, so we can watch you later. And I'll let you each introduce yourselves a little bit. Now, just to know the history of Plymouth with these three people, Katherine is from St. Lucy's, Lucretia's from St. Augustine's, both membership congregations of ACTS for many years. Andrew is from Legal Services of Central New York. They were very involved in ending solitary confinement for teenagers in Syracuse when we were working on that together, this congregation and ACTS and others in the community. Andrew was there also. A man who's not here today is Josh Cotter, who became our superhero in that process. And so with that, I'll let them introduce themselves.
Do we need the mic? Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Andrew Croom. I'm an attorney at Legal Services of Central New York. I work under our Take the Lead project, which is a combination community organizer, community lawyering working group. So I work here and in Utica, primarily focused on tenant organizing and tenants' rights works.
I'm Lucretia Hudzinski. I'm a member of St. Augustine's out in Baldwinsville, and also part of their social action and race awareness. And gotten very involved in, after we finished juvenile justice, then we went on to housing.
Hi, I'm Katherine Polhamus. I go to St. Lucy's, and my job during the day is I'm a support broker for people with developmental disabilities. And I have a number of people on my caseload that have housing subsidies in their budgets. So I've been working with issues with housing and low income for many, many years. But I got involved with this group, and we did some community organizing training during COVID, and we just kind of grew from there, got involved.
Let me grab this for one more second. There's a person I did not introduce and most definitely should have, and that's Mabel Wilson, who has been working on housing in this city for as long as I've known her. And she is a resident who is being impacted by these changes. Bonnie is not here, but the two of them have kind of been heading the task force work recently. So there's Mabel. She'll be part of questions and answers, most definitely. There you go.
Where would you want to start?
Maybe we should start with how we got started. Now we got
So I guess one place we can start to, before we get into our work, is what, I guess, level of understanding do people have of the project going on in the East Adams neighborhood? Okay, not much. Okay. So SHA, the Syracuse Housing Authority, is going through what is called a RAD conversion. That's a weird acronym for a way that a public housing authority can transition the subsidy they get from public housing to a voucher-based Section 8 system. So right now, when you're in public housing, you get a certain portion of your rent subsidized through that public housing scheme. What is going to happen now, though, because of disinvestment in public housing over years and years and years, right? The federal government does not put money into public housing anymore. So, it falls behind, repairs are needed, the housing stock gets worse and worse. So what they came up with was this way that a public housing authority can transition from that typical public housing subsidy into one that is backed with private money, private funds, right? That they can leverage those private funds to move to a Section 8 type project-based voucher system. So all the residents will still have the same rent paid, but SHA or Syracuse Housing is not going to be a public housing entity for those buildings anymore. And to accomplish that, they are going to tear down all of McKinney Manor, all of Pioneer Homes, and all of Central Village. It's about, 1,000 to 1,200 units. They're also doing some at AOT, which is the towers down there. They're also doing a RAD conversion, but nobody's going to have to move from that. But all of those residents are at some point going to have to move because those physical buildings are all going to be torn down. It's going to be probably at least a 10-year project with 13 phases. And so what we've been focusing on is working with tenants in McKinney Manor to ensure that they have the information that they need to prepare for what is going to be probably a 2-year relocation for them. So McKinney Manor is going to be the first to be torn down, and every resident in McKinney Manor is going to have to move. They're going to have to move for probably 18 months to 2 years. And so one of the good things about RAD and these types of conversions is there's a lot of rights that go with it. But if tenants don't understand their rights or don't know what those rights are and they cannot assert them, they may miss them. And probably the strongest right is the right to return, meaning that if you keep that right when you are relocated, then you are going to have the ability to come back to a brand new unit in one of the new buildings that they're constructing. That's a really strong right. It's really important. But if people say, oh, I'm going to have to move somewhere for 2 years, maybe I just want to go forever, they're going to be removed from that community without any chance of coming back. So it's going to definitely have some huge impacts on the community down there. So what we're trying to do is talk with the tenants, meet with the tenants, provide what supports that we can so they know what those rights are, because it's a very, very confusing way to do things, especially when you're going to have to be moved somewhere for 18 to 24 months. And so I'm going to turn it over to Lucretia and Katherine, because they've really been the on-the-ground workers that have really met with the residents.
Since January, right? Katherine, she keeps me informed, and I go, when did we start? So I just want to give you a little background, because one of the things that I did when we got started is what was all the hubbub of what happened when 81 went up, because I didn't understand it. So I went back and did some historical research and realized that was a thriving community of people of color, and also there was a large Jewish community there as well. And what happened was they were made a lot of promises when 81 was supposed to be going up, and all those people lost their businesses. Many of them tell us about the housing that they lived in that was torn down. And so it was McKinney Manor is what went up during that phase. So now we're here again, and we're dealing with a community that has been forced to, and was just reminded at the last meeting we had for the lead paint, that Oceana Farr said, we were forced to live in those communities. There was all the redlining. There was the landlords who would not rent to people of color. And so people were forced to live in that whole East Adams area. I always get my east from west. So anyway, we heard rumors of things not going very well, and we wanted to know just what was going on. So we went house to house, and I think it's about 41 out of 57 households we were able to connect with, get phone numbers and all. And I just want to put the human element on those 1,000 units, because sometimes we forget that there's actual people, because we talk about units, but we don't talk about who lives there. So the first one that impressed me and just got my heart was the grandmother who's taking care of her grandchildren, so they stay out of foster care. And as we talked to her, she started to cry. And she said, they tell me to trust them, that they're going to find me a place to live. But I feel that the knock is going to come on the door, and I don't know where I'm going. And that's pretty much the consensus of many of the people that live there, that they have this mistrust of the housing authority. Because if you look at what's been promised to them and not promised, and things that haven't been accomplished by the housing authority, then you know why there's mistrust. How about the woman that goes and takes an Uber to work to go to Amazon? And I'm going to leave some of the stories to Katherine.
She pays up to $45 for a ride to Uber, depending on the weather and the time of day and the demand. It may cost her as much as $45 to get there.
Many of them don't have cars, and if they do, they don't work. We know several that are sitting there, and people, that one guy, he's working on his car every single time we go there. And and there's a lot of other stories. I know that our church has helped the grandmother who just got custody of her grandchildren to get toys for the kids and books. And then there's the other woman who told us it's a choice between rent and food. And so there's many of those that are there. So just remember that these are human beings who are being told that their house is going to be torn down and they're going to have to move and really don't know where they're going. I'm going to let Katherine take it over from there, and then we'll go back.
Okay. Yeah, we've gotten to know people over the past few months, and I think it's taken a while to build trust. You know, some people like the woman you were talking about, the grandmother, she invited us in right away, and we were there probably 45 minutes, but just to listen, to take that time to really listen to her story. So some people were very distrustful in the beginning, but I think we've become more of a regular. They have our phone numbers. We have their numbers. Some people were hesitant to share their numbers at first. So I think we've built a sense of trust now. Yeah. Just understanding that people's lives are complex. Many people work jobs, they're paying for childcare or just juggling childcare where they can. That area is a food desert. There's one woman that walks to Butternut Street to the grocery store with her kids and grandchildren, brings extra kids to carry bags home. Because around McKinney Manor there's no grocery store. There's nothing downtown. So.
One of the things that, looking at this community and knowing that for years it's been neglected. I mean, if you look at the homes and as we walk through them, we see the neglect. I don't think there's ever been a can of paint put on any of those buildings, and all the siding is coming down and the windows are not the best. And so recently I just saw a film or a documentary that Pastor Burns was involved in Ohio. And the quote that really got to me was the gentleman that got up and said, "They don't find us worth investing in." And that's that whole community. And I feel like that statement makes it's all over there. And that's when we got involved with legal services, because what was happening was people were owing rent. That was our biggest thing. And we're like, owing rent? Like they had never gotten a notice before. And now all of a sudden they owe rent going back years. And sometimes they haven't been reassessed as to what they really should be paying. And we're thinking that maybe the books are not as great as they should be. So we said, we can't handle this. So we call in Andrew. And so we've been doing some organizing, because one of the things that we're finding is the people there feel they don't have a voice. The Housing Authority has told them that the Tenants Association is pretty much run by the Housing Authority, when in fact we know that that's not supposed to be. That they can call their own meetings. So we're trying to give them a help up to make sure that they know that they have a voice and that they can run their own meetings and call their own meetings. But I'm going to bring this over to Andrew. Well, go ahead.
Could you just tell us where this place is, McKinney? I don't know what street that is.
East Adams at South State Street, corner of East Adams at South State. So it's
I always think of it as the bricks as pioneer homes. And then if you look, and I always thought these were really beautiful until I got up close, the townhouses, and they're more colorful. So that's McKinney Manor.
Judge McKinney.
Adams Street East, turn on south. Go right by Hobbs Church, where you turn to
Yep.
go see Hobbs Church. McKinney Manor is over there on that side, just as you turn the corner. Okay. On your right.
It-
Left.
One other thing I wanted to mention, because Catherine and I saw this. So what's happening is there's some vacancies in McKinney, and with that, it brings another problem. So we were going door to door, and we're trying to figure out which ones are vacant and not. So this one we went by, Catherine said, look, and it was a duffel bag, a pot, and a sleeping bag. Obvi-
Bundle of clothes too, so,
Yep.
yeah, somebody, and it could be somebody who was evicted or whatever, but they're living there in the little doorway.
And I'll add one more thing about the violence. So we have heard over and over again, they can hear the shootings. And they call the police, and the police go, do you see anybody? Well, if they don't see anybody, the police don't come. But the one that we experienced was the people that we knew. You want to tell that one about?
Yeah, there was a shooting. They think it was between two gangs, but it was on, what was the street? It's between McKinney and Pioneer Homes, that street there. I think so. I'd have to stop and think. But anyway, so one of the women that we work with said it was like almost midnight, and all of a sudden she was asleep, and she heard a shot go through her place. So I went inside. I could see outside where the bullets went, and they went upstairs. And the neighbor next door told me she thinks it pinged off of her shower and went through the other person's apartment all the way through, and there's bullet holes through the doorways, the walls, all the way through to the exterior wall.
Shower, she probably would.
The one next door, yeah. So people call the police, and nothing happens, basically.
Could the three of you talk about the timeline that you're hearing? I know the timeline has been changing, but what are you hearing most recently? And I also want to include the voucher process. What's the timeline for the voucher process? And then my third piece of what you were saying, Andrew, is what's the accountability for the right to return for people? Who's keeping track of that?
All right, good question. Ask them to me again, though. So I just want to start with, in concept, this is a great plan, right? SHA and those developments have some real issues, right? Again, from years of neglect. Building brand new apartments that are going to have a lot more housing, not just public housing replacement, but there's going to be market rate. There's going to be low-income housing tax credit units, meaning other types of affordable units. This can be a great planning concept, right? If you look at it, it looks great. What we want to make sure of, though, is that in implementation, as Lucretia said, the residents, the people are at the forefront. And we're not just talking about units. And I think our biggest concern is, SHA or their development partner, McCormick, Barron, Salazar. Those entities look at units and not the people, right? And so how do we ensure that or help those residents get the voice loud enough so that they have some say in this process? And the other thing that goes along with this project, and while they're separate, is the I-81 project. So I-81 literally sits on top of Pioneer Homes, right? SHA's headquarters is under the highway. So that project is going to be happening simultaneously with this. And yet people are still going to be living in that footprint. So you're going to have a massive construction project starting at McKinney Manor, probably as a time frame in the next probably 3 to 4 months is what we're hearing. We'll see what it actually is, but I would say at least in the next 6 months, that project is going to be started. At the same time, the highway is going to be coming down, and that you're going to have people living in pioneer homes now between these massive construction projects. You know, what are the environmental impacts of that going to be, right? What the lead paint, the lead dust. You know, how are they going to start addressing these safety concerns in the interim, right? Why is there not more impetus on ensuring that people are safe in their homes when these projects are going on? So there's just a lot of collateral concerns as well as the actual transition into this different type of housing. I saw a couple of questions. Let me get to those and then we'll go back to your questions.
Two questions. Is Pioneer Homes planned to be part of the tear down as well?
Yes, the entire thing.
The entire thing will be. And the second is, could you say more about the right of return and how that's being managed?
Yep. So what will happen is the residents will receive a 90-day relocation notice, at least those in McKinney Manor. So that will be given 90 days before they have to be out. And then they are supposed to have a group called Urban Strategies, which is a subsidiary of the developer, help them relocate either to another public housing unit, such as moving to Pioneer Homes, to get a Section 8 voucher where they can go anywhere in the city to rent, or they can go to a different type of affordable housing that wouldn't be public housing, such as Freedom Commons in that same footprint. That's not public housing, but it's affordable housing, meaning it's still subsidized rent. If at the time that they have to relocate, they're in good standing with their lease, meaning their rent is paid, they don't have any major lease violations, then that right of return will attach to them. The right of return is very strong because they get to come back. There's no rescreening. There's no income changes. If you have the right of return and you want to utilize that right, you will be allowed to come back once those buildings are done. Again, that's going to be 18 months to 2 years, though, which is a long time for people to be located somewhere temporarily. And so when you come back with the right of return, basically all your rights that you had as a public housing tenant are going to be the same. And then you would be given a new unit in the buildings. And I think there's going to be around 270 new units, and like 136 of those are going to be public housing replacement units.
I don't know how many of us realize this, but this is the same tune we danced to about 30 years ago.
Exactly.
The exact same thing.
Yep. And if you look at these projects throughout the United States, the right of return is really low. Like the highest I've heard is 25%. So I think it's more likely 15% of the residents that are relocated are going to come back. And that's just such a small amount of people when you're looking at the communities that exist now. And as Lucretia and Katherine will tell you, the relationships with the neighbors there are really important, right? They rely on each other. They know each other. They help with things like childcare, all of that, transportation. And so to displace an entire community like that for such a long period of time is concerning about how many people are actually going to come back. I'm just going to let people go because everybody has hands up. So, yeah.
Go ahead. I'll hold it.
I'm in a situation where I am looking for a permanent house. I'm homeless at the moment. I'm a verbal abuse survivor. I found out that Syracuse Housing, which is a division of New York Housing, knew nothing about what happened with the Greens. Absolutely nothing. They still had those up. I don't know if they followed through on my conversation with them, but I'm a justice-oriented retired minister, and I was livid when I heard that. And I have been now 3.5 months in respite looking for an apartment. There is no such thing as a voucher in this town right now. They've told me Section 8 does not exist in this town because there's such a... And there are something like 80 empty houses on the north side. What the H is going on in this town?
Well, I'll say even, there's vacancies in McKinney Manor, right? There's 17 open units there. We're in a housing crisis in Syracuse. Most of the country's in a housing crisis, but my office probably does 80% of our work is probably eviction defense. People are getting evicted and have nowhere to go because, like you said, there are not available housing. So to see 17 units, even if those units are going to be demolished in 3 months or 6 months, that would be 3 to 6 months that could house 17 families, and yet they're being kept vacant solely as a cost-cutting measure. Because if you don't have those units occupied at the time of the conversion, then you don't have to move people. You don't have to pay to rehouse people. You don't have to give them that right of return, so you'll have more units available in the new properties. So that's concerning, right? The Section 8 is, the wait list is at least 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now for that could be that's probably more accurate. Right. So the wait list isn't even open at the moment. They only open it periodically. So for the RAD conversion, though, those residents that go through that would jump to the front of the line and be given a voucher, right? So, but again, though, that then takes more vouchers out of the general populace that can be utilized because it will then be given.
Voucher for how much?
So the vouchers that the tenants at McKinney Manor could opt for would be given to them immediately. There would not be a wait because they under a RAD conversion, there cannot be any involuntary permanent relocation, so they have to give them those vouchers or find them a unit immediately. But in the interim, right, you're probably keeping other public housing units open that could be occupied right now.
About a person that's been on the waiting list for the last 5 years.
They get bumped down. Yep.
And Andrew, the question about the RAD and the voucher program. We were at a meeting at Martin Luther King. So I told the powers that be at the table that I would like to move because I don't want to return them. By the time they get to pioneer homes, I'll be in my late 80s or so forth. But the woman from home headquarters said that if I take the voucher or the RAD, they would turn it into cash where I'd be able to buy a house or something. Is that true?
Yeah. I've not heard that, but so you are entitled to relocation money under certain circumstances, but it's not a huge amount of money. I'm not sure about what the program is where you can transfer a voucher to home ownership. There is a HUD program like that, but I just have actually never heard of anybody actually being able to utilize that in the way it's supposed to. Yeah. So the voucher amount depends on the family size that is underneath the voucher.
What's the range?
I think for a family of 4, it's like $1,600. That would be for like a 3-bedroom, if you could find one. Now, the issue with the Section 8 voucher is it sounds very good because you can utilize that with any private landlord, but the housing stock is in terrible condition, right? The Section 8 housing quality inspections that they do at the beginning are basically jokes. I have so many clients that take their voucher, move into a place, Section 8 clears it to move in, and then it's falling apart, right? The codes violations rack up immediately because of how bad it is. The landlords aren't fixing it. And so while it looks great that you have the mobility of a Section 8 voucher, where are you actually going to go, right? The housing stock just isn't there to move into a livable place.
Do you qualify for a voucher if you owe back rent?
No, because you wouldn't be in good standing with your lease, right? And so that's the concern about all these new non-payments that are coming up, is why are they coming up now? Is it to try to put people out of good standing with their lease so they are not entitled to those relocation protections at the end? That's the question that we haven't been able to get answers to yet with SHA. But I'll tell you, this past summer, we were in court, not myself, but my organization, and the Housing Authority attorney said, oh yeah, we're not doing payment plans anymore. Right. And we said, what? And it was a crisis moment because if you cannot get a payment plan, you're going to be evicted for non-payment, right? There's very few defenses as long as they've done anything procedurally correct. And so we had to fight very hard to convince SHA that, no, you have to have a payment plan option in place. But that was a tactic that they were going to use, and that was going to speed up evictions immensely. And I have to assume that that's somehow connected to, forced vacancies of these developments. So the cost is going to be less during this conversion.
I have one more question. What about new location of the apartments, and how will it affect us politically? People are going to be changing the constituencies and stuff like that. So how will it affect our political system? Or is it?
I don't think we've even discussed that second part. How the project, again, in concept is supposed to work, and this would be a great thing if this is how it happens, is that McKinney Manor residents, which is the smallest of the developments, are all going to have to relocate for that 18 months to 2 years while they build the new development. But because of how large that's going to be, there's going to be an extra 60-some public housing units available if everybody returned from McKinney Manor. So actually even more than that. There's 57 families right now in McKinney Manor that would technically be able to apply for the right of return. There's going to be 133 public housing replacement units built on that site. So what the plan would then be is once those are built, then they would start at Pioneer Home, and they would move the people in Pioneer Home to the public housing replacement units in the new building. And therefore, there would not be any long-term relocation. That would just be them moving from Pioneer Homes to the new building, and then that would be where they live. They wouldn't have to ever relocate more than that, which would be great if that's how it works out.
Is it still going to be in the city? I mean, is it?
Oh, it's going to be on the same footprint.
Oh, same footprint.
So McKinney Manor's everybody's being relocated because they'll raise that entire footprint, and that's where they'll build the first building, along with something called the Children Rising Center, which is, I think, a YMCA or... Yeah, it's going to be like a youth center and things like that. So, in concept, that would be a great way to do it, right? Only have to relocate those 57 families, hopefully most of them return, and then utilize the rest of the replacement public housing units to start moving people from Pioneer, build the Pioneer, move the rest there. That's how it was originally envisioned, assuming everything comes through. But this is also $1 billion project, right? How much money they have right now is a question, right? Do they have the financial backing to actually go through this long process, right? RAD also sunsets in a few years. Will RAD be re-upped? Because it's called a rental assistance demonstration, meaning it's not permanent. So if that sunsets, some of the conversions in the future may not be RAD, and then people might not have a lot of those protections. There's just so much unknown right now, and the lack of transparency from SHA in really engaging with the residents in a way where they can be part of the process and understand it is where the confusion is coming from, and I think the fear is reasonable under those circumstances.
So I just want to say that I had a conversation with Mary Reed from the Housing Authority, and I asked Mary, where are these people going? Because one of the folks from Urban Strategies told me, everybody knows where they're going. And I said, Mary, where are they going? Do you tell me that you have so many units within the Housing Authority, within the city, that you're going to be able to put these people in a 90-day period? And she goes, it's a daily conversation. And I said, that's not what I asked you. And then she repeated that again. It's a daily conversation. So I don't think they know either.
What is, I really appreciate this overview. This is very eye-opening. But just a question down the road. How many children are involved with all of these units? Do we have a number?
You got to figure this.
Almost every one of them.
Yeah.
So we may be talking about several hundred or thousands of kids?
Oh, if you look at the whole picture, yeah.
What about, for example, their schooling? What's supposed to happen to their education in all of this process?
So our understanding is that they will be able to continue, right? To continue in their school district. It's one of the things the city does have, that they'll be able to,
You stay with your home district.
Right.
Yeah, your home school within that district.
How do they get to school?
How, all this,
Transportation for that?
Yeah, they provide buses.
More city buses.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do
Oh my
provide
God.
busing for that, but again, are kids going to want to do that, right? Or are they gonna wanna go to school, especially if they're moving for 2 years? or they're going to want to go to a school that is closer to wherever they live now. Again, it's a breakup of that community is going to happen in McKinney Manor. That is a concern too, of how everybody's going to stay in contact.
Right, and a lot of people are concerned how far, because some people heard they could be put as far as East Syracuse. So a couple of people voiced concerns to us that their appointments, their school, their community is there, and to put them out somewhere else is going to be a hardship.
Thank you. Two questions. One is, are there other leaders besides Mabel and others from the community itself who are able to advocate with you well? And secondly, have there been any models at all in any other cities that have been successful with this kind of program?
When you say successful, do you mean that have done it the right way, or that have done it? Because yes, there are a lot of these conversions going on. In terms of leaders, that is what legal services' primary goal in this is to help build leadership within the residents, right? To help those residents learn to grow, to organize themselves, so that leadership can really rise. Mabel's a natural leader, right? She's been there, she's done it. Others, though, it's a scary thing to push against your landlord, right? That has control over your housing, especially at this time. And I think we've identified a number of leaders, but it's ensuring that they have the supports that they need to feel comfortable really raising that voice. And I think that's what we're really focused on right now, is cultivating that leadership in a way where they are the voice. My voice doesn't really matter in this, right? I can tell everybody the facts, but my voice isn't the one that needs to be heard. It's the residents of McKinney Manor that have to be at the forefront of this, and get that voice out there, not only for them, but also to show what can be done for Pioneer Homes when that starts, or Central Village when that starts.
One thing, we had a meeting a couple of Tuesdays ago at the coffee house, and to tell us what is being planned and to see if they're going to get us residents on board. But one of the things that after I got out of my shell, is that I didn't know that McKinley Manor was part of Syracuse Housing and the whole shebang. So the thing is, what was brought out about the residents from Pioneer Homes that was at that meeting is that we care about our residents in McKinley Manor. And this took some time with the work of that Katherine and Lucretia is doing to let the residents there know we care, because if we didn't care in Pioneer Homes, or McKinley Manor residents would feel more let down because they would think that we don't care. And the thing is that there is a type of division within Syracuse Housing Administration that wants to have this division. And we don't like it as residents. And also to build up, like Andrew and Lucretia and Katherine saying up there, is that we want to build up trust with us as a whole community to get our rights.
And to the question of success, we're really fortunate to be working with the National Housing Law Project, which is a nationwide advocacy group that has an attorney on staff that specifically works on these RAD conversions. And so they've been able to help us get in contact with people on the ground in other communities that have gone through this already and can say, this is what you need to look out for. These are some of the tactics that Urban Strategies undertakes or McCormick Barron undertakes. And so that's really helpful. And so success, what I hope is that as these projects go on and we learn more and more how to deal with them, that we can be at the forefront of having a successful conversion, one that has a much higher rate of return than others have shown.
I just want to, I'm hoping one of the people who are part of the housing justice meetings that have been happening at Hops Church could describe how that is happening, just to know that because there has been this movement to get to hear the residents and to meet with the residents, Hops Church, under the encouragement of Linda Briggs, Pastor Briggs, stepped forward and started offering weekly meetings in Hops, which is walking distance from Pioneer Homes and McKinney Manor. They provide childcare. They provide Andrew and other people of the Housing Justice Task Force to come together and meet. And they have invited Plymouth Church to be part of that. It's again under the umbrella of the Housing Justice Task Force, which is part of ACTS and our Plymouth work, but it's a real step up, I would say, for Hops Church, who have been right next to those housing areas, those housing neighborhoods for a long time and haven't really been engaged in this. And so it's kind of an opportunity for us also. We're neighbors with these housing units. We can walk down the street and meet some of these people. So it's an opportunity for us. If any of you are interested in going to these meetings, check with Mabel or Bonnie Siegel or myself. Bonnie, have you been going to any of these meetings? Can get a little bit from Bonnie on what it's like, Tom.
Well, Bonnie gets the mic too. I think it's going to be on the 7th, the screening we're going to do, of the 8th. So on October 8th, we're going to be doing a screening of Raising Liberty Square, which is a documentary that was done around one of these conversions, and it is a cautionary tale around what can happen. And so we're going to screen that, for residents, but also anybody else that's interested in coming. So again, that's going to be the 8th in the evening. We'll screen the movie, and then we'll do a little discussion period as well.
Where will it be?
It'll be at Hops.
Okay, 5 o'clock. Tuesday the 8th. Give Bonnie just a minute here, and then we'll close our.
That's what I was going to mention, is that this film would be a great place for everybody here to see what's happened in another place, and also maybe to meet some of the residents, because we're going to be putting our effort into getting residents of the whole footprint to come to this same film. But the whole community is invited, and I think it'd be a great place to become aware. We could end up with a new housing, that's going to happen, big housing developments in where that is, that none of us feel good about, because it'll end up being gentrified. And none of us will know where did everybody end up going. And that's what I don't want to see. What I want to see is for our whole community to be proud of what we've developed here in a whole different way than has happened. So right now the meetings are very, we've only had 3, I think. And at the last one, people from Syracuse Housing Authority, who are also neighborhood navigators, they also have a role, and they also are residents of public housing in this footprint, but they have dual and triple roles. Maybe they work for Syracuse Housing Authority, they're a resident, and they're an officer on the tenants associations that exist now. Anyway, about 4 people came to our meeting, and now Mabel is never intimidated, and but of all the people there who were the folks we've been working with, I think Mabel is probably the only one that was unafraid to speak out and say what she'd been seeing. Other people were like, oh, I don't want to say anything, And then they told us later that so-and-so scares them. They're afraid they're going to get something taken away. So we really have a lot of work to do, because even for me, I don't know how I would respond if I had that direct intimidation right there with me.
You want to know that they are threatening to evict people, and I was one of the people they want to evict. I don't have all my information, but I know I've been living there since 2010, and the property manager called me and told me, Miss Wilson, we never had any problem with you paying the rent. So somehow or another, my office apartment, I can't find all my papers. But somehow or another, if you stand up for yourself as a resident in Syracuse housing, you're gonna get it.
Mabel, how easy is it for you to get a receipt when you pay your rent?
You don't get one.
That's
You
a-
don't get one
You know
unless,
it's a legal requirement in New York
Yeah.
that any landlord including public housing gives you a receipt when you pay your rent. It is impossible for Syracuse housing
Yeah.
tenants to do that. They just won't give receipts.
And
then
in
they-
Brighton Howard's, they don't give receipts.
Right.
I've been watching
And
this.
then they say, oh, you owe rent.
yeah,
You don't have anything to push back on the accusation that you owe rent.
Yeah.
Because they won't give you a receipt.
They
So
won't.
These are the kind of things that we're.
show their ledger.
Yeah.
No.
Prove that your rent was paid.
So these are the things we're also really helping the residents with, right? Is how they can advocate for themselves in these spaces.
Yeah.
Or bring us in if they need additional advocacy help to ensure they're getting the things that they might need to protect them down the line.
It's very, very hard for me to say it's time for us to pause and disperse. These people will linger. I told them they could stay till 12:15, but I just want to encourage you that if you're thinking, oh gee, how can I get involved, or maybe I don't really know enough to get involved, these are pathways of how to get involved. These organizations, these women who could probably use a third or fourth person to walk with them. They haven't even started in Pioneer Homes yet. Yes, exactly. And these meetings at HOPS, and this film that's being shown, and getting into a relationship with Legal Services of Central New York to refer people to. It's an excellent organization.
Vote in local elections.
And vote.
VOTEP.
Yeah.
I got something for this, the 28th of this month. If our families across the nations, my father would say, would come to Pioneer Homes from 10 until, we're having the politicians here, and that is in, from Congressman Claiborne, that was here 2 Saturdays ago or something like that at People's Church. So we're having all of those that is running for office, but to get to know our residents, please come. We're gonna have barbecue.
We'll get that information to you. That's a promise. The people at Plymouth who are working on Housing Visions can commit to all of you and to our network through whatever, it's Facebook or whatever it is, our relationship with our sister churches, that we, and faith communities, Zen Center, that we will make sure the information is out so you have options. There's no time to dally. And I would like to suggest a new way home today. Get yourself over to Adams Street, go east at the fire station, which is South Ave,
Oh, yeah.
turn right, drive down that street,
You
and
mean
you'll
State
be
Street.
going through the neighborhood. And I had committed years ago that every time I went home from Plymouth, that's how I go home. Because otherwise, you just go through your safe zones in your home. So become a neighbor. And I think Plymouth is working on that, and I know St. Augustine's and St. Lucy's and the Zen Center are, and thank you very, very much for staying for this forum. It was really, really important to all of us.
I told Eric I was gonna be quiet, but I had to say
No,
something.
no,